Sampson here from Kyiv, and I want to thank you for stopping in for a brief update on basically 1448 day of invasion since the Russians tried to consume this country. It's 4378 of full scale, I believe, and my 1402nd day since the beginning of this. Um, I just posted a new article that I'm very happy to announce. Shows that the Transparency Corruption Index has been released for 2025. Ukraine went up, like I knew they would. America went down, and Russia is always at the bottom, nearly. Actually, if you go further down, South Sudan is there, but Russia never goes up on the incline. Hungary, I use as a counterposition to show all the garbage talk from Viktor Orban continues to decline. Slovakia continues to decline. So the point is that for all those who shout this word corruption in order to avoid accountability of helping this country, we see where the numbers are. The numbers don't lie. This is why I like doing analysis work instead of sort of ad hoc journalism where you say what people want to hear or you grief peddle, and it's very important not to do so. The numbers, I actually started doing this, so we're in 2026, so I don't know, at the end of 2023 or beginning of 2024, I got tired of hearing that word and not corruption and not really understanding how it played out here. And I really find it important, if you're going to use such a word or hear it all the time, you should know where it comes from and what does it mean. Every country has a different problem with what that means in corruption. In the United States, it's so vast I could take up an entire space and talk about it. In fact, tonight I will, which is part of the reason why I want to go live now. Tonight we will have a discussion with our friend Craig Unger about how the Republicans from Reagan through Bush to Trump have used outside influence to win elections, steal elections, play their game. So I hope you'll join us for that. But I looked at the numbers from from the year 2000 forward, the first time I did this, and I picked apart what did this mean? What does the Transparency Corruption Index actually mean? It is a way in which investors, big investors, people way beyond my pay scale, measure um, the risk at hand when they're trying to invest in different countries for different reasons. And I remember a couple years ago, let's see, May 2023 actually is when it was. I talked to a man who was here looking at the reconstruction efforts, and he said very clearly, he goes, when it comes to big deals, if I had to put another 10,000 on the table to make a good thing happen, then I had to make that calculation. I don't operate like that, so I don't know that mindset, but I understood what he was saying. In other words, that the cost of doing business for the good is a truism in many parts of the world, and he gave me sort of a reality check of how things work around the world. So what did it mean here? In the first year, there was an area in Lviv where we went from what was a normal road to a road that looked like crap, trying to get to a location in town, no less. And as I was saying, wow, this is really kind of messed up. My friend, he goes, well, this is what happens with corruption. Like the guy was given money to repair the road and he just disappeared. So I heard from the beginning young people saying, when I said, oh, I'm here because I believe in Ukraine, I'm here because I want to see good things happen. The first thing they said was, can you help us with the corruption? Again, since I didn't really know what that looked like exactly, what does that mean? Is it at every level? Is it all the way to the top? What does it mean here? It's a word that I couldn't put in my head just loosely, and I think that all of my viewers and friends need to keep that in mind when it comes to the news headlines and repeating things. Right? If you know what it's about, and if you know the context, you're going to do much better for either confronting it or helping Ukrainians. So I began to pick it apart. And I found that in the era before Yanukovych, there was an upward increase in improvement. It was modest, but it was there. And I don't know at that time how pernicious it was and how it played out. I know that I read about it. I kept trying to study, and then I found the most important part. The time at which the numbers went down against Ukraine were during Yanukovych years, and it's going back up after Yanukovych was removed. The NABU, SAPU, Nabu and Sapu were created in Euromaidan era entirely to confront that very corruption. Many of you who pay attention to Ukraine may remember last year that there was a protest held because of a vote that the officials had tried to roll back the powers of Nabu and Sapu. And it was met while I was actually down in Mykolaiv, finally getting down there. It was met with protests right here in Kyiv, and in 7 days was reversed. Think about that. The United States is in chaos right now under Donald Trump, trying to seize and put his name on everything, trying to control every part of destroying the DOJ to destroying the intelligence agencies to manipulating the markets and throwing tariffs at whoever he just has a bad mood about, to trying to steal Greenland, to just a whole range of absolutely off the charts insane measures that no leader before him in my lifetime has been so obvious about, or at least so brash about. And I opposed Richard Bruce Cheney, the now dead guy. And the level of corruption was always there. It's power corrupts absolutely, but this brash behavior of Donald Trump is lays bare the claims of the supporters of Trump that like to bash Ukrainians. So I put that in the article, no less. I said very clearly in my article examples where everyone from Marjorie Taylor Greene to Tucker Carlson, J.D. Vance, use these lines in order to attack Ukraine as a way to avoid doing the right thing. So again, read the article I just put up, and you can pick it apart if you have any criticisms of it. If you have something in there that you think is incorrect, let me know. Number two, today posts on Twitter are showing that Financial Times has tried to say that Zelensky is working on elections to be announced in spring, the 24th, which is actually just a couple weeks away, almost exactly a couple weeks away. And I can smell bullshit quickly. Sources say it's not a bad thing. We talked about this with Brian Karem, but I heard this before. I hear this all the time, this sort of water cooler politic way of approaching the news sphere. And batteries trying to go dead on my phone. And I kind of know what's happening here with that. I know how impossible it is to hold elections, and the amount of pushback that happens from citizens, from displaced citizens, from the guys in the army. So, do they talk about it? Well, yeah, I don't think Zelensky wants to stay in office forever. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to sit in that position forever. But everyone here knows that Russia wants to do this in order to put in their guy. And wonderful love to Los Angeles, and thank you. And to everyone that's jumping in here so quickly, I appreciate you. We thank you. So when you see this headline, and I see it pushed out also by the Times in London, and Christopher Miller is pushing it, there are other supporters pushing this. Please be aware about yanking that collar. Yanking that collar around has emotionally devastating consequences to the supporters, to Ukrainians. We're tired of it. We're sick of it. No one wants this war to stop more than Ukrainians. No one would love to have, free and fair elections here than Ukrainians, but it's weaponized. And until we get clear, we need to be very careful about so-called journalists passing this information off at tabloid level. And I don't know who people like Christopher Miller and Max Seddon are talking to. Don't really care, because I'll give you context. I've been here for 4 years. I have MOD pass, military accreditation, and I get to talk to officials all the time. I get to talk to different people in the military all the time, and I run into contradictory information. What does a journalist actually do versus a reporter? A reporter takes something they heard and says, "Oh, I heard this today. I heard that today." And look, it's raining. Okay, now it's not raining. There's no depth to it. A journalist should take the time to go, okay, I've heard this now. Okay, I'm going to hard test it. I'm going to make sure I understand the reality check of it. I'm going to go hard test this. And you will find plenty of times that even officials who whisper behind the scenes are either incorrect, it's out of context, and the journalist should know better. I run into it all the time, and good meaning people who are not lying to me, it's just different perspectives of the same situation. There may be a discussion on one end and yet a reality check on the other end. So I'll use an example that happened many years ago when I was at the radio station, KPFT 90.1 FM. We had to sign essentially a secrecy agreement to our deliberations about the schedule we were going to be discussing. And I had a friend that said, "Oh, if you're signing a secret agreement, then you're, almost like you're corrupt or something." I said, "No, no, no, no." And again, his conspiratorial mind and his lack of trust in the officials around the station, or different other people, was driving his way of looking at things. And I learned something in this process because I knew I knew what I knew about what was happening in these deliberations, and I could see the gap in his logical perspective. Why would we not tell the people who were at risk of losing a show or liking a show what was happening? Well, because we needed to have an open discussion of how the whole schedule would look. And there were a few sacred cows. We had a show called The Prison Show, which on Friday night would allow families to come in and call and talk to prisoners. Actually, they wouldn't talk to prisoners. They would talk on the radio, and that would be broadcast to the Huntsville prison. And they would be very emotionally charged shows. I can't even listen to that show because it was, one, it's not for me, and it's very, very personal. Mom, Mom and I are not coming tomorrow, or Dad's got cancer. Just whatever it was, very, very, very hard show, and almost an immovable object. But in order to make deliberations about what the whole schedule looked like, we did experiments where we would say, okay, just take all the pieces off the table and let's look at this at a big picture. And there were groups that, if you had that leak out just for half a moment, would just come bombard the station, right? Deliberations were happening in a thought experiment, not in a reality. But all it would have taken is one person to hear just a little bit. Did you hear they're removing the prison show? And this happened a lot. Little bitty gossipy moments that were based in an ounce of truth were spun and spun and spun and took on new life of their own. So I'm glad to be in my mid 50s, heading towards 60 in a few years. And I have these back experiences where I remember the younger me not believing in the authority figures, or not automatically assuming things, or I should say slight assumption, but not automatically assuming goodwill. And then over time I learned there was always a little bit more to deliberations than I understood in the public. And that's really how I see these issues. When I see Zelensky's been ordered to do this, or Zelensky said that, or Biden said this and Trump said this, I have to wait because the information is unsettled. And there are competing agendas here. There are competing agendas around all parts of the leadership here. So please remember that when you see articles that are going on and on about what Zelensky may or may not say, look at other articles immediately. If Financial Times says something, and I'm about ready to just write an article about how many times they've been off, go to somewhere like Kyiv Post, Kyiv Independent. Actually, let me give you some better ones. Ukrainska Pravda, RBC, Ukraine, and why. Ukrainska Pravda is kind of known for being a little bit of an axe grinder. I think that while I have concerns about that, I can go over there and I can tell you that because of the difficulty towards the press in the past, the context of where they operate needs to be understood that way. They are intentionally adversarial press on a certain level because of the way the past has been about journalism. But also keep that in a certain lens. So when they say something, don't just say, "Oh, Ukrainska Pravda said so, therefore it's true." It could be true, but there's still a context. In other words, I too have seen them kind of allege wrongdoing in a small way or a certain way that I go, okay, hold on. That's again Ukrainska Pravda making that comment. Let me go look at another one. What does RBC say? What do I see in some of the the news spheres of people I know reliably. What can I hear over the phone? As a journalist, I get to actually message and or personally run into different officials and ask them, and I will, I'm a pretty unassuming and nice guy where I'll say, hey, I heard that, America ordered you not to hit oil facilities. No, 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 that's not what happened. And, this is really dangerous when we repeat this because it's more complicated than that. What it's about is, and then I hear a better understanding in person than I got out of a newspaper, or even worse, I get out of the supporter base who is so protective, appropriately protective for Ukraine, that it just grabs the first negative thing and just bites into it. So try to be really cautious about this. And especially, I'm sorry, Financial Times repeatedly has been yanking us at the collar for something that winds up being overblown. Final thought, real quick. Today I was really, really blown away and blessed to see messages with my return friend, um, Ruslan Kurtmalev. And you may have seen last week, his wife, Olga, was featured in the news welcoming him back. Olga, she faced cancer during his captivity. And it's a real powerful emotion to wake up and have messages from this young man who just returned from captivity. And to share why I do this, or it's real short because I don't want to take up their time, but just to rest assured that I'm still here, and some pictures about what's happened, and seeing him like my photos, supporting him, supporting his wife, supporting the defenders. You see the flag that I keep back here in the back from the 501. I've stood by the wives and the brothers to make sure that they come back. And all of them, I have no preference of one battalion or the other. We have to free Azov fighters. We have to free territorial defense, border guards, and the Marines, all of them. See enough see, as we say, all for all. But in particular, we'll talk about this Friday when we visit with our regularly new scheduled Friday report with Sean Penner about what happened with the 501 and how the commanders basically forked them over to the Russians. And it's actually a little even more complicated than that. I've had the guys who were in that situation tell me more of the breakdown, and over time we'll bring that to you because I think it's important. But I said over a year ago that if you are doing this kind of work and you sit down with a mom, a wife, a daughter or brother, or a defender, and they said, for the last few years while I was in captivity, what did you do to help? Your actions today should reflect what you want coming out of your mouth when that comes around. Did you do the right thing? Were you posting stickers and memes trying to be, there goes the lights, by the way. Power just went out. Did you do everything possible? Were you serious along the way? Can you justify your actions of 4 years of support as a serious person, or was it like a clown show, Caribbean beach party, parade, etc.? Now, I'm not trying to get on people who have like a joyful way of countering Russian disinformation. Let me be very clear about that. But there are times where even I will say, what have I prioritized in my daily work and my daily battles that puts these people who need me and need us at the front of our agenda and our perspectives and priorities. And it really did shape more and more how things went on. It shaped really what my priorities were. So if I had days where I was really tired, I was really aggravated, or the resources weren't there, I still had to look at what does it feel like to be that mom or that wife that doesn't have that resource. What does it feel? So get it together, Chris, and go out and be more effective. So when these guys come back and see a very consistent effort from me from November 2022 in that particular case till today, I know I didn't do as much as I could because I didn't know what to do along the way. I had to keep learning what to do. If one effort failed, I had to adjust the effort. I had to listen to people who were more experienced. And even this week, I was talking with a friend of mine who's a photographer, a Ukrainian, who photographs the defenders, and she does an incredible job at really capturing who they are and what they've been through, but with dignity. And I'm never too big to be able to say I have much to learn about how to do this better. When I asked my other friend Natalia, whose husband was returned in September 2022, what can we as journalists do where we're helping and not hurting you? Where when we say, hey, did you get your defender back? We're not re-traumatizing you. That was what that was all about, is to say, check your actions, check your efforts, and justify them, or, center them around the needs of the most vulnerable, not how you feel about yourself, not the patches you put on your wall and the badges you put in your heart, but what does the person who needs you most say when you're done? And then put it in the corner and move on. There's more to do. So I told Ruslan, all of you who pay attention, I said there's people who really care about you beyond even me. I'm just one of a widget of many people. And I just wanted to share that with you because it's a very, very powerful emotion to be able to communicate with a man who hasn't even been out of captivity 1 week yet. Um, I'll process the emotion offline. It means a lot. And I have screenshots of a lot of guys that come back the day they follow me back or something. It just is incredible that they're home. And then we're on to the next list of people who need to be prioritized. So I'll say it that way as the final comment. I mentioned this last night in my brief comment after our really great interview with Alexander Hara. I invite you to go check that out. It's right here on this Substack. That I always meet a new mom, wife, sister, brother, dad, who is waiting for their defender to come home, and my friend Sophia is waiting for her husband Dennis to be returned, to be accounted for. And so pray for those people who are going through such hell, and to all those who have been waiting the entire time. Same thing. Put your heart in the right place. To all the people in captivity, to the children who are removed into Russian occupation, or Russian Federation territory and disappeared. Don't forget those. So that's the message for today. I will be back tonight. Can't wait. I really look forward to talking with Craig Unger about the corruption of Donald Trump with the Russians. What is his fascination with Putin? Is it Is it that there's compromise? I think it's different than that. I say Vin lubit Putina. He loves Putin. He thinks he's a Judoka. The worlds are aligned in the way they see the things. And so I really hope that you'll enjoy that conversation tonight. Don't forget to be here. It'll be 3 p.m. East Coast time, 10 o'clock Kyiv time. Tomorrow we have John Fugelsang, and then Friday we have Sean Penner will be joining me for our Voices from the Front / Wiretap Friday briefing. And then Saturday, I am already gearing up to bring you Culture Saturday. I have a couple of films I made that I'm going to add some translation to so you can read them on the screen. And we'll get a little deeper into the roots of what's happening here. And of course, I can't help but put some very good information bits in there so you can see, what the people go through here. So I appreciate your time. And if you don't mind, make sure you're subscribed to this account. You can do it for free, $5 per subscription. Paid subscription helps to add up. In fact, to those who've already done so, thank you. I was at vapor level on on funds because I just got one of the plugins I use for several sites. $60 this time. It used to be 50. The bill came in 60 right as the server payment's going through, and that basically yanks out all the funds. And then for the first time since I started this account, at this full blast, I should say, just happened to get a payment just enough to balance it right back out. So there's enough to not panic about it. You can go get some food, pay for the stuff. And I live very frugal on purpose because I want to prioritize every amount of research time that we have abroad. Costs money to travel. I have to get down this next spring, back down to Mykolaiv. I want to go down there and interview our friend Alexander Kiryenko that you saw take on Azalea Banks. He lives down in Mykolaiv. I have a lot of friends in Kharkiv. They're waiting for me to come back. And why don't I go more often? Because it costs money. You have to pay at least for an Airbnb or somewhere to stay. I want to go to Lviv to cover superheroes and see superhumans. Sorry, superhumans. To me, they're superheroes. Superhumans. There's a lot of work outside of Kyiv that we're looking forward to do in spring and summer. So your help in doing so is easily done by just having at least a $5 subscription here. But all articles are and will remain free. I'm only making sure that we put the information out. As an example, on Kyiv Post, I have 10 articles at Kyiv Post. I have been paid zero. No, I'm not saying that to insult them. I'm saying that because that is not my priority. I will work it out. And to those who've actually helped make sure that those things are not a problem for the last 4 years, thank you. People here notice it. People here around me come up while I'm filming and say, "Thank you, дуже дякую за підтримки і допомогу," and thank you for paying attention to my country and the support. And I'm in that category. If there were no bills to pay, I would just work, and then we have to stop and go figure out how to bring in the money instead of working. That's true for Sean Penner. That's true for a lot of the analysis folks that you see leaving cable television on this platform. Pick a few of them, go over to Sean's, for instance, and put $5 on his account. I'd rather you do that actually than I'll figure my part out, because we're trying to build up guys like Sean to not have to go do the other jobs. And I would say it's really a priority that someone like that, especially with Sean, that we have that experience, that invaluable experience as a soldier, as someone who was in captivity, as someone who lives here, that I'd rather him doing this work with us than having to go get something else to pay the bills for him and his wife. And that is the reality for a lot of folks. So at least consider that. Pass it on if you can't. And then reboost the posts. Take the information that you see, share it, like it, and tell your friends. So thank you so much. And as you know, we always say here, Slava Ukraini, Героям слава і пиздець Російській Федерації.